AITA for refusing to ground my daughter after she told her stepmother she didn't care about her cancer diagnosis. Even though my ex demanded harsh punishment, I, 37F, never thought my marriage would implode the way it did, but here we are. My ex-husband, 42M, and I had been together for years, built a life, bought a house, and had 2 kids, our daughter who's now 13 and our son who's 12. For a while, I believed we were stable. That illusion shattered the moment I gave birth to our son. It was a complicated delivery, and I ended up in the hospital recovering longer than expected. I was vulnerable, physically, mentally, and emotionally. That's when my ex decided it was the perfect time to leave me. Not only did he leave, but he left for Paula, 35F, the woman who is now his wife. While I was still hooked up to monitors and trying to hold a newborn in my arms, he was making plans for his new life with her. It wasn't just the affair that broke me. It was how they tried to use my weakened state against me. They attempted to get custody of the kids while I was still in recovery, pushing the narrative that I wasn't capable of being a fit mother. Luckily, that failed, but the betrayal cut deep. What followed was a divorce that dragged on for almost 2 years. It wasn't just emotionally draining. It was financial warfare. The house we had shared became the main battleground. He tried to insist it was entirely his, even though it legally wasn't. I fought tooth and nail, and in the end, the house was sold and the proceeds split 50-50. I wasn't even celebrating the money. I just needed closure, needed that tie severed so I could breathe again. Custody became another battlefield. After months of lawyers, mediators, and ugly court sessions, custody was split 50-50, but with an important caveat. I was granted sole decision-making authority regarding education and medical care. The judge wasn't impressed when my ex admitted he would make decisions with Paula instead of consulting me. That sealed it. The court made it clear that I would be the one to make those critical calls for the kids. Even with custody settled, the damage was irreparable. My relationship with my ex is nothing short of toxic. We communicate only when necessary, and even then, it feels like every word is a barb. As for Paula, there is no relationship at all. I hate her, and she hates me. That hatred isn't born from jealousy. It's from years of her inserting herself into matters that were never hers to begin with, years of watching her and my ex prioritize each other over the well-being of our children. I can say, without hesitation, that my ex has always put Paula above the kids. Time and time again, his actions have shown me that her comfort, her feelings, her needs come first. It's not just my perception either. The kids feel it too. They're not blind. They watched him bend over backwards for Paula while dismissing their feelings. They've seen him brush aside their discomfort just so Paula can feel more like their mom. That's the backdrop of our family story. Betrayal, bitterness, and broken trust. I wish I could say things smoothed out after the divorce, but the truth is, every new chapter with my ex and Paula seems to bring another conflict. And unfortunately, those conflicts always seem to find their way back to our kids. After the divorce papers were signed, I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. Custody might have been split 50-50 on paper, but in reality, it turned into another battleground. This time with our kids caught in the middle. When our daughter was 6 and our son was 7, things escalated. My ex and Paula launched into what I can only describe as a campaign of parental alienation. They weren't satisfied with simply having time with the kids. They wanted to rewrite the family dynamic. Paula especially went hard at it. She insisted the kids call her mom, and whenever they refused, she'd sulk or guilt-trip them. My ex backed her every step of the way, acting like the kids owed her that title. I still remember the first time my daughter came home upset. She told me Paula had corrected her for calling me mom in front of her, saying, "You have 2 moms now. You can call me mom too." My daughter was confused, angry, and scared that using the wrong word would get her in trouble at her dad's house. My son, usually the quieter one, admitted Paula told him that I wasn't strong enough to take care of them the way she and their dad could. Hearing that from their little voices was like swallowing glass. These were children who were supposed to feel safe with both parents, and instead, they were being manipulated into questioning their loyalty. It wasn't just words either. They actively tried to interfere with the kids' therapy sessions. The court had mandated counseling to help them adjust after the divorce, but my ex and Paula treated it like an obstacle. They skipped appointments, argued with therapists, and even tried to coach the kids on what to say in sessions. Therapists reported their behavior, and it became clear to the court that my ex and Paula weren't acting in the children's best interest. It all came to a head when the court intervened again. Custody was re-examined, and for almost 2 years I was granted full custody while my ex had only supervised visitation. It wasn't what I had fought for initially. I had always wanted the kids to have both parents, but by that point, their emotional safety came first. And honestly, those 2 years were the most stable my kids had felt since the separation. They went to therapy regularly, their grades improved, and they started to relax in ways I hadn't seen in years. But of course, it didn't last forever. My ex and Paula were eventually forced into co-parenting classes and parenting therapy, essentially remedial education for people who refused to put their kids first. Only after they completed those requirements was visitation restored, and eventually custody went back to 50-50. Still, the damage was done. My kids learned early on that Paula wasn't in their corner. They never forgot being pressured to call her Mom, or the way she spoke about me like I was disposable. Even now, years later, their relationship with her is strained at best, hostile at worst. My ex has complained plenty about their disrespect, but when I asked for specifics, he always dodged the question. It wasn't until recently that an example finally came forward, and that's what set off the latest conflict. The truth is, Paula's attempts to force herself into the mom role only backfired. Instead of bonding with the kids, she alienated them further. She made herself into the enemy in their eyes, and my ex, by siding with her every time, solidified that divide. By the time they hit their preteens, both my kids were done trying to play along. So when Paula's health crisis entered the picture, there was no foundation of love or respect for the kids to lean on. All that existed was resentment. Life has a way of throwing curveballs, and 2 months ago, my ex and Paula got one they weren't expecting. Paula was diagnosed with cervical cancer. The news spread through the family quickly, though not because they told me directly. My daughter mentioned it in passing after a weekend with her dad, almost like she was testing how I'd react. Later, I got the official email from my ex, though as usual, his focus wasn't on informing me so much as demanding cooperation. When I first heard, my reaction was complicated. On a human level, of course I don't wish cancer on anyone. It's a devastating diagnosis, and I wouldn't wish it even on someone I despise. But on the other hand, I couldn't ignore the history. Paula has spent years undermining me, treating my kids like pawns, and making no secret of her contempt for me. It was difficult to muster the kind of sympathy my ex seemed to expect. At first, I thought the situation might soften Paula, or at least encourage some humility. I was wrong. Almost immediately, she and my ex began reshaping the kids' roles in their household. Paula framed it as, "I'll need my babies more than ever." The implication was clear. She expected my children to step up, help care for her, and fill the void left by her inability to have kids of her own. My ex ran with the idea. He started assigning them tasks. Household chores meant to lighten Paula's load and support her during treatment. On the surface, it might sound reasonable, but for kids who had never truly bonded with her, who remembered years of manipulation and disrespect, it felt like a demand, not a request. The kids saw through it immediately. My daughter in particular bristled at the sudden shift. To her, Paula wasn't a mother figure. She was the woman who replaced her mom while she was still in diapers, the woman who tried to erase me from her life. And now, after years of coldness and control, Paula was calling them her babies and expecting sympathy and service. It didn't help that Paula's infertility struggles had always hovered in the background. The kids knew she and my ex had tried for children of their own and failed. They knew, even without being told directly, that their very existence was a reminder of what Paula couldn't have. And now, with her diagnosis, it felt like Paula was using them to fill that void in the most manipulative way possible. My daughter confided in me after one visit that Paula kept bringing up how lucky she was to have them, how much she would need them. My daughter's words were sharp. She never cared about us before. She only cares now because she's sick. My son, quieter as always, admitted he didn't want to help either, but was too afraid to say it out loud. For me, it was hard to watch from the sidelines. I understood why they felt the way they did. Years of alienation, pressure, and cold treatment had left scars. Paula's sudden need for their devotion wasn't coming from a place of genuine love. It was coming from desperation and entitlement. My ex, instead of acknowledging the complicated feelings the kids had, demanded compliance. That dynamic, expectation without reflection, set the stage for the blow-up that followed. Because when Paula confronted my daughter directly, she didn't get the answer she wanted. It all came to a head one weekend when the kids were staying with their dad. Paula was sitting in the living room, talking about her treatment schedule and how things would be harder around the house. She leaned on the same phrase she'd been using for weeks. "I'll need my babies more than ever." This time, my daughter didn't bite her tongue. She looked Paula straight in the eye and said, "I won't help you. I don't care that you have cancer." It was like a bomb went off in the room. Paula burst into tears, and my ex exploded in anger. He told my daughter she was cruel, heartless, and ungrateful. He demanded she apologize immediately. She didn't flinch. She crossed her arms, stared him down, and repeated, "I'm not sorry." My son, sitting quietly nearby, kept his mouth shut, but later told me he agreed with his sister. He was just too scared to say it out loud. That night, I got the inevitable email from my ex. It was long, angry, and dripping with blame. He told me our daughter's words were as good as wishing Paula dead. He said she needed to be punished harshly, grounded for at least 30 days, longer if she continued refusing to apologize. He He even suggested our son might need discipline too, since he seemed to share the sentiment, though he hadn't spoken it aloud. Reading that email, I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. He wasn't asking me to talk with the kids about empathy or helping people in need. He was demanding that I extend his punishment into my home, as though our custody arrangement made me his enforcer. I refused. I wrote back that I would not ground our daughter for a month or at all, and that instead of trying to force apologies, he should reflect on why the kids felt this way toward Paula in the first place. Punishment wouldn't change the truth. When the kids came back to my house, I sat them down. I wanted to hear their side without Paula or their dad breathing down their necks. My daughter was blunt. She said she was sick of Paula acting like their mom when she had done nothing but undermine me and hurt them for years. She said Paula had never cared about how much damage she caused, and that asking them to play caretaker now was insulting. "Why should I help her?" she said, "when she wanted to replace you and didn't care about us." My son admitted he felt the same. He said Paula used to openly say she wished something bad would happen to me, that I'd get sick so she could take over as real mom. He told me, quietly, that he thought it was unfair to be asked to help someone who had once wished me harm. Their words broke my heart. Not because I thought they were wrong, but because they were so painfully honest. These weren't kids acting out of malice. They were kids responding to years of manipulation, cruelty, and resentment. Still, the emails from my ex kept coming. He accused me of being a bad mother, of encouraging the kids to hate Paula, of trying to curse her through them. He demanded again and again to know if I'd grounded our daughter yet. But I didn't, and I won't. In the days that followed, my inbox became a battlefield. Every evening, there was another message from my ex. Accusations, demands, and name-calling thinly disguised as parenting concerns. He insisted I was failing as a mother because I refused to carry out his punishment. He wrote things like, "You're letting adult issues turn the kids into awful people, and you've poisoned them against Paula, and now you're refusing to discipline them for it." I didn't respond right away. I wanted to focus on my kids instead of his venom. So I sat down with him again, not as a lecture, but as a conversation. I asked my daughter if she truly understood the weight of what she had said, that telling someone you don't care they have cancer could be heard as wishing them dead. She didn't back down. "I know what I said," she told me. "I meant it. I'm not going to pretend I care when I don't." There was no malice in her tone, just honesty. Brutal honesty, the kind that comes from a child who's had enough of pretending. My son nodded along quietly, and when I pressed him, he said, "It's not fair to make us help her when she hated you. She doesn't get to ask for us now." That's when it really hit me. They weren't being cruel for cruelty's sake. They were drawing boundaries. They were saying, "We see how we've been treated, and we're not going to fake love to make her feel better." I told them I respected their feelings. I also reminded them that cancer is still a serious illness, and that wishing harm on anyone isn't something I want them to carry. But I made it clear they were not obligated to play nurse for someone who had spent years making them feel unwanted. Meanwhile, my ex kept hammering me. One email claimed that by refusing to ground our daughter, I was effectively teaching her to celebrate suffering. Another accused me of using the kids to curse Paula. That one almost made me laugh, if it hadn't been so insulting. He even dragged our son into it, insisting that because he appears to share the sentiment, he too should face punishment, even though he hadn't said a word at the time. It became obvious that this wasn't about discipline. It was about control. My ex wanted to force the kids into a role they never asked for, to rewrite years of strained relationships into a picture of dutiful stepchildren rallying around their sick stepmother. And when they resisted, he wanted me to enforce it. But I refused. Not because I enjoy conflict, not because I want to poison them, but because I know my children. I've seen their tears, their confusion, their frustration over Paula's behavior. I've sat with them after visits when they felt like strangers in their own father's house. Their feelings are valid, and I won't punish them for expressing them. Do I wish my daughter had chosen softer words? Of course. But children don't speak in measured, diplomatic phrases when they're hurt. They blurt the truth. And the truth is that Paula hasn't earned their sympathy. Every new email from my ex only reinforced my decision. The more he ranted, the clearer it became that he wasn't really interested in the kids' well-being. He was interested in protecting Paula's pride. And once again, he was putting her above them. So I've stood my ground. I won't ground my daughter for speaking her truth, and I won't force my son into silence. If my ex can't see why they feel the way they do, that's his problem. My job is to protect them, not to make them caretakers for someone who's done nothing but cause pain. Now I'm left sitting with this uneasy feeling. On one hand, I know my kids' words were harsh, especially my daughter's. Saying you don't care about someone's cancer is cold, and it's not something I want her to make a habit of. But on the other hand, I can't ignore the context. Paula isn't a beloved stepmother who poured love into them. She's the woman who tried to replace me, manipulated them, and wished me harm. My kids aren't heartless. They're wounded. My ex can't seem to see that. He thinks grounding our daughter for a month will magically erase years of resentment. He thinks forcing apologies will heal relationships that were never nurtured. To him, this is about discipline. To me, it's about respecting my children's boundaries. I'm not pretending I'm perfect here. Maybe I should have pushed harder for my daughter to phrase things differently. Maybe I should have tried to guide her toward empathy, even if Paula hasn't earned it. That's the part that makes me second-guess myself. Am I letting my own bitterness toward Paula cloud my judgment? Am I teaching my kids that cruelty is acceptable if someone has hurt you first? Still, when I weigh it all out, I keep coming back to the same place. Punishing them for refusing to play caretaker for someone who made their lives miserable feels wrong. AITA for refusing to continue my ex's punishment of our daughter after she told her stepmother she didn't care about her cancer diagnosis.